G'day my running fam, I'm Average Dom Slim, and if you want to improve your marathon time, then this is the simplest, easiest recipe for doing so. In fact, there couldn't be a more straightforward video on YouTube about marathons. I'm going to give you 5 tips, it's the best number, and if you follow those 5 tips, I almost guarantee that you'll run a PB at your next marathon. And the only reason I say almost is because we live in such a heightened social climate. Otherwise, I'll just flat out guarantee it. Almost. Look, I'm not even going to mess around with you. I'm going to give them to you straight up front. Run for longer. Eat more carbs. Train at threshold. Run up hills and be consistent. I wish that last one had 3 words. Be super consistent. And look, if that's all you have time for, then good day to you. But if you do stick around, of course, I'm going to go into detail. But first, let me play some theme music, you subscribe, and I'll meet you back here. Now, very briefly, me. I've run 3 marathons and I was on the precipice of running a 4th. It just wasn't meant to be. The first was for the challenge and with an admittedly very undercooked preparation. The second was until a few years later when I was running quite a bit and I smashed my debut marathon by about 43 minutes. The third was a different kind of challenge. It wasn't on the roads, it was in the Australian outback, so it was never going to be the fastest time. But I won, so that was nice. The 4th was going to be huge. But as I said, it wasn't meant to be. Now, the next time that I run a marathon, I want to run 2:35. Now, I know I haven't done it yet, but that would be almost an hour faster than my debut marathon. Now, these 5 tips are what I credit to my improvement in the marathon. And I'll continue to follow these 5 tips myself when I try and run a 2:35. They're also what I would give to anyone who asks me, how do I run my fastest marathon? Come on, let's go. If you want to complete a marathon and or run a marathon PB, then you have to run for a really long time. So when you train, you have to teach your body to run for a really long time. Exactly. Now, why? It strengthens your heart and cardiovascular system. It develops your muscles, tendons, and joints, and makes your muscles more resistant to fatigue. It improves your mentality and mental resilience. It is such a key and simple way to become a better marathoner and a better runner in general. Now, how? Building your long run is one of the funnest parts of marathon training. You can explore more of the world. For example, one time I ran from Zambia to Zimbabwe.
Hey boys. Good.
Another time I did a 36-kilometer long run across the coast of Dili in Timor-Leste. Now, I know not everyone can do that. You can also use long runs as an excuse to be social, like this beautiful run I did with my partner and my sister in Sydney.
That is gorgeous.
Because the key is keeping long runs at an easy effort, a conversational pace, and your heart rate should be very, very controlled. Now, depending on your base level of running, what you run in peacetime, you'll need somewhere from several weeks to several months to have enough time to train for a marathon, to build your mileage, including your long run. You want and you're going to benefit from having the time to build very, very slowly. If you do a 20-kilometer long run and you nearly died from it, don't do 25 kilometers the next week. Just do 20 kilometers again and try and feel better in that run. And then maybe move up to 22 kilometers. How much you build your long run overall depends on you as a runner. Now, the most important thing, even in your long runs, is consistency. We'll get to consistency later, but it's going to be more beneficial doing, say, 5 runs of 35 kilometers than trying to skyrocket your long run up to 40 kilometers just because it seems closer to 42. To give you a general guide, I would try and get your long runs up to at least 32 kilometers, and I would say there's no benefit in going any more than 38 kilometers. During a marathon training block, intermediate runners may start to turn their long run into a marathon session, comprising fast periods of marathon pace efforts with slower efforts. But for beginners, I recommend just staying slow and steady and focusing on increasing your time on legs. Most importantly, enjoy your long runs. Eat more carbs. Why? Carbohydrates are what create energy stores to fuel your running. Distance runners just need more carbs than those people who aren't training. Not eating enough carbs can be hard on your body, affect your training and your recovery after sessions. Muscle damage is lower on a high carb diet, which shows that carbs have a protective effect. Your mood and emotional states are worse on a low carb diet. So the takeaway here is that your marathon training will benefit from you paying attention to nutrition in general, particularly carbs, and making sure you refill your tank after running. So how do I eat more carbs? When I say carbs, I mean healthy carbs. I'm not talking processed sugary foods, but starchy carbs, rice, bread, pasta, potatoes, oats, whole grains. Pre-runs, especially long runs and hard sessions, eat carbs. And after runs, eat carbs and protein to help rebuild broken muscle fibers. In general, where you can, choose high carb options, especially as you increase your mileage during marathon training. And during your long runs, practice consuming those carbs to replicate your fueling on race day. The more you can intake without feeling sick, and you can teach your body this, the better you're going to be for it on race day. So just to clarify, you get to eat potatoes. When do you get such a fun and delicious recommendation? Why train at your threshold? Simply, it improves endurance. Thresholds increase your ability to endure greater intensity for longer. And that's exactly what you need to run your fastest marathon. And how do you do it? Well, firstly, find your threshold pace. It's about 90% of your max heart rate. But we all know it's just super difficult to calculate your max heart rate for a number of reasons. As a general guide, your threshold pace should feel comfortably hard. It should be a pace that you could hold for 60 minutes, although you'll never do 60 minutes in a threshold. An even easier way of calculating your threshold pace? Use this calculator. V.02, I use this thing for everything. So just chuck in a recent PB that you've got, and it will tell you what your threshold pace is. At the same time, it'll also tell you what you should be running for your easy pace and give you a guide of, what you might be able to run for different distances in races. It's pretty damn cool. Threshold workouts are simple. Ideally, you want to get up to running a 30-minute threshold, but you can start a lot smaller and break it up into sets. Like everything in running, the best way to do it is to build slowly. Here's a great way to do it. Start with 2 sets of 7.5 minutes, and then work up to 2 sets of 10 minutes, then maybe 3 by 8, 3 by 10, 2 by 15, until you've got 1 set of a 30-minute threshold. Keep the pace steady, generally run on flat terrain, and remember to warm up and warm down. Run up hills. Why, you ask? Again, it's simple. It creates more power in your legs. It increases strength, it improves running economy, and it enhances mentality. If you incorporate hill training regularly, and your marathon has hills, you're going to crush them. And if it's flat, you're just going to fly. There's no downside, except of course that running up hills is really hard. And a lot of people find it unpleasant. And if that's you, you're normal, don't worry. I'm just weird. I just love running up hills. I love the feeling of my heart rate rising. I love the challenge, and I love the feeling of accomplishment when I get to the top. Now how? According to me, there's 3 main ways to incorporate hills in your training. The first is hill reps, and this is what I do. The second, I call hill sprints. This is just my terminology, by the way. And the difference between those two is just the speed and distance of the rep. The third is incorporating hills in your easy runs and your long runs. Hill reps. So this is what I do. So I train hills in 2 locations, and that's because they give me slightly different courses. The first gives me about 54 meters of elevation gain over a 750 meter climb, and then a 54 meter drop over about 450 meters of descent. So these are 1.2k reps. And I rotate which way I go. The second is 1.8k reps with a 900 meter climb over 56 meters of elevation and then all the way back down. This one's just an out and back, it's not a loop. Hill sprints, short, fast reps. The plus side is you only need a small, steep hill to do your reps and you can just walk back down. It's great for building power in your legs. But unlike the longer hill reps, the downside is it doesn't really replicate what it's going to be like for your marathon with those long, horrible hills that you might find at Boston or Sydney, for example. The last option is incorporating hills in your easy runs or your long runs. Now, if you're going to do this one, I would suggest preferencing putting those hills into your long runs and keeping your easy runs as easy as possible. Of course, this is easier to say than to do. It depends on where you live. Nothing actually simulates a race better than doing a long run and having some horrible hills in the middle. But when you do it, slow down. Try and keep the effort the same, which means the pace is going to drop, and that's okay. The other upside of this approach means that you don't have to dread a dedicated hill session every week. Now there's actually one more way to incorporate hills in your training, and that is doing trail running. Most trails have hills, or at the very least undulate, and they're usually scenic and peaceful. The only downside is they're usually less accessible, depending on where you live. But one way or another, run some hills. I would say at least once every 2 weeks, if not every week. You're gonna thank you for it. I know, it sounds cliche, but I've been running seriously for a couple of years now, and there is no single better piece of advice that I have. It's annoying, I admit, and I'll tell this to runners when they come to me asking for advice, saying, running is hard, I'm not improving, I'm not finding it fun. They ask for advice, I tell them to be consistent, and they'll get results, and they just roll their eyes. And then they come back to me 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, and they say, I'm loving running, and I'm getting PBs every race. And I say, what do you think it is? What changed? And they say, I was just consistent, I guess. And I say, now why be consistent? Because running in its best form is a long-term game. It's not really for the impatient. Results most of the time aren't going to come immediately. You're going to be the best runner you can be if you can chill and slow down and be patient and be super consistent. I'm talking week in, week out, month in, month out, even year in, year out. You'll have ups and downs, injuries, life things, but all in all, you want to try to keep on track. You'll also want to not get injured, of course. Now it sounds obvious, and it is, but it's not so easy to actually execute. My strong belief is that the biggest factor in getting injured is something you can't control. It's luck. If you look at the professionals, they do everything in their power. They have the resources, technology, facilities, and access to experts that none of us have, just to make sure that they never get injured. And have you ever heard of a professional athlete getting injured? Yeah, all the time, right? So you may be the perfect athlete and you still get injured. It's gonna happen. That's just running. So we know you can't completely avoid injury, but what you can do is certain things to mitigate the risk of injury. Now, what things can you do? There are lots of things. Too many things. You've probably heard all about them floating around, and it's hard to know which ones to do because you only have so much time. You're only one person. So if you're going to approach them, if you're going to implement some of these things to mitigate the risk of injury, here's a prioritized list. But just know, this is just my perspective. I'm just one man. First and foremost, be careful with your training load. Build slowly in mileage and intensity. Take rest days and deload weeks. The easiest way to get injured is going too hard too fast. Also, keep easy days easy and save your efforts for your sessions. I'm a huge believer in the benefit of gym, both to improve your running and to protect from injury. At the same time, substituting some of your running for low impact cross training like swimming or the bike can help your body recover from the pounding of all your running. Eat well, making sure you're getting enough calories, carbs and protein. Now, I touched on this as a significant point for actually improving as a runner and a marathoner overall, but it also acts as injury prevention. Shoes. Make sure that you're wearing the right ones. And also replace your shoes when you need to. Now, this is a lesson I've learned the hard way. It's simply get your feet measured and tested or whatever it's called for the right shoes, track your mileage in your shoes, and then replace them when required. Vary the terrain you run on. Substitute cement for gravel, trail, grass, even sand where you can. Recover through stretching and foam rolling. This helps your muscles recover from workouts. Take supplements like magnesium and vitamin D, especially where a blood test may show you're low or deficient in a certain area. Supplements can help bridge the gap. And recover through sauna and ice bath. It may help, unproven, except for the mental benefits. So aside from not getting injured, how do you stay consistent? Well, you can run with friends or a group, sign up to races, write goals, set a schedule. Overall, be good to yourself. Be forgiving when you're off your game, and reward yourself for being consistent. Me, personally, thanks for asking, I want to run a really, really good marathon at Gold Coast 2025 after missing out this year. Then I want to run New York, and then Berlin. Let me know where you are in the world and what marathon you might be training for. I hope my simple tips provide you some help and some guidance among all the noise that is running information these days. And if it did, and if you want to follow my journey, then please subscribe. Keep it simple, smash your training. I'm Average Johnson. Do the right thing.